Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick unboxing and first look at the HP Spectre X360 15t refresh with Intel's 11th Gen Tiger Lake processor. Now, I did already review the 15t, but that was a very different build than this. It was a 10th Gen machine with an RTX GPU. This, on the other hand, as you can see right here from the build, has Intel's, again, 11th Gen i7 1165 G7 CPU, which does have some significant gains over the 10th Gen Ultrabook processor, that the Ice Lake Gen CPU that it replaces. But keep in mind that the 10th Gen with dedicated GPU model that I covered, it may look a lot like this, but I expect performance to be very different because that's a different class of processor, even if it's an older 10th Gen CPU, and it does have a dedicated NVIDIA GPU. Here we have a 0.5 terabyte Intel SSD. This is pretty much standard with HP's pre-configured machines. And then we've got 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM. Of course, no optical drive, Windows 10, and then we have a 15.6-inch 4K IPS panel. So this is not an AMOLED. Again, another difference between this build and the 15T that I've already covered that I keep mentioning. That one has an AMOLED display. Here we're going with the UHD IPS panel, which, as you can see, is a low power but still 400 nits of brightness panel. So I'm expecting this to really give us better battery life than the AMOLED version, especially also because of the processor. Those are two things it has going for it. Of course, Bang & Olufsen sound, the fingerprint scanner, a 6-cell 72.9 watt-hour battery. So this really should do quite well when it comes to battery life. Let's go ahead and get this thing out of the box so we can see what we're cooking with here. Now, it's going to look pretty much the same, I imagine. I don't really anticipate any tremendous differences aesthetically with this machine and the 15T that I keep mentioning. And, you know, which one is right for you is really going to boil down to what your needs are as a consumer. If, you know, you're looking for the most powerful machine available, then this isn't probably going to be the right machine for you. And I'll get into why. So you can see they've included a sleeve, a case, which is always nice. Packaging, robust, as usual, for the Spectre line, and it is HP's top-of-the-line consumer 2-in-1, so this is expected. So let's get this thing open, and let's see. So, as I mentioned, if you're looking for pure performance, which means you don't really care about battery life, then this is not the model to go with, and that's because not only does it not have a dedicated GPU, again, a pure performance selection if you need it, but on top of all of that, as I keep mentioning, that processor, it is Intel's latest and greatest, but it's an Ultrabook processor. It is not designed to be a workhorse, so be aware of that. This is more about getting a 15.6-inch Ultrabook form factor with, of course, better battery life, and in addition to that, better performance, because that's the beauty of Intel's Tiger Lake CPU. Some major gains both in traditional performance as well as graphics with their Iris Xe, and that's what I'm expecting to see here. Now, this is probably going to be, again, if you're in the market, that should have opened everything up, but it looks like I'll just have to tear it apart. If you're in the market, hopefully, I hope I didn't lose the seam there to undo the packaging, because there's a lot of plastic here. But if you're in the market for a affordable 2-in-1 that has pretty much everything other than a dedicated GPU, I think that's where this fits really nicely. And that's why when HP offered to send it over, I said, yes, please do. Because even though, again, I just covered the, you know, more powerful, more robust, and of course less battery life version of this with a 10th Gen CPU, this is still a welcomed addition to the lineup. So the next thing we hit in the box, pen as well as power adapter. So the power adapter is, I believe, a 135 watt power brick. This is something I'll address in my update and full review. And then the pen is, I believe, HP's revised tilt pen, and that's significant. We're going to see if that makes a difference in the inking process. I have experience with the previous generation, and, you know, it was good, but hopefully this is going to be even better. 2 replacement tips are included. This charges via Type-C. It just opens up, I believe. Let me pull off the plastic first. And I like this revision, I have to say. Compared to the previous pen that HP included, I think it's nicer. I have the previous gen pen right here. I mean, you may not be able to see it here in the unboxing, but you will absolutely see it in my follow-up coverage, as well as the inking video. You can see the tip difference. It may not be in focus. Very big difference. So I'm expecting a performance difference. And the Tilt pen, which was a more expensive purchase that I added on to my 13T, that also is drastically different. So although it does share the Type-C charging in common. So we'll see how well it performs. Definitely interesting. Nothing else in the box. Let me get the box out of my way and get to the machine itself. So 15 inches, Tiger Lake. As I've mentioned, overall, this is going to be all about its battery life. And if you do want a 4K panel and are willing to forego the AMOLED, this could end up being a very good solution for you in terms of budget and overall performance. Not everybody needs a dedicated GPU. Not everybody needs the most powerful CPU. So I think this is going to be a nice balance. Micro SD card slot right there, something I'm glad HP still incorporates. Your webcam kill switch right there. We've got, this is something, you know, that traditionally you don't necessarily see anymore, which is a lot of solid I/O. And I say that because God knows there are so many machines that they're trying to make basically the lack of I/O part of design. Thanks, Apple, for that stuff. So Thunderbolt 4, I believe both of these are Thunderbolt 4, but I'll confirm that later. We've also got, on the other side of the machine, the power button right there at the edge, your headphone microphone jack, as well as an HDMI port. So that's the power pin. That is the headphone microphone jack. So that's something to be aware of with this. That 135 watt adapter is a proprietary charging brick. This should still be able to get charged using the Thunderbolt ports, but I would imagine that those are not going to give you full performance with this machine, but we'll find out, okay? Ventilation looks pretty much the same as the 15T that I've already covered. It might have changed slightly, but this is all, of course, about the hinge and what this machine can do as a 2-in-1. We'll be getting into inking with this as well. Don't worry if that's something you're curious about. There is the keyboard. You've got your numerical keypad for those of you that like it. They have, you know, it's still off-center, but this doesn't really bother me. I know it does bother some people. I'm not one of them. Still fairly straightforward. You can see we've got the Iris X graphics, XE, which there is a big difference between Ice Lake and Tiger Lake when it comes to integrated graphics. Gaming at 1080p with almost all titles is possible. That's something I couldn't say about Ice Lake. Even though Ice Lake was a solid performance bump, it doesn't come anywhere near what we're getting with Tiger Lake, at least from what I've experienced thus far with the machines that have come in. So this will be another way for me to find out. And with the 4K IPS display, we're also going to get, at least my opinion, on how good a job HP has done implementing something that should afford us much better battery life than its AMOLED counterpart. Now I'll go ahead and mute her right off the bat. This is part of what I love about HP's keyboard deck. They've really got dedicated buttons with LED notification on them, so if you want to mute your microphone, you don't have to go into settings and check. You can just visually see it. Just like the kill switch with the webcam, I love that. You know, Lenovo's still doing a plastic switch. I'm not a huge fan of that. Now, you have an IR Windows Hello compatible camera right there in the bezel. The redesign was really on the machine I already covered. So this is just continuing that, which is bringing roughly 90% screen to body ratio to this machine, which is a big difference. If you go back to the 15T last year, it had a forehead and a chin that would make this machine not unrecognizable, but a completely different beast because essentially what I love about what HP has done here with narrowing their bezels isn't just that they reduced them, but it's changed fundamentally the form factor of both their 13.3 inch as well as 15 inch model. This is a little over 4 pounds, I think roughly 4.4, so that's not a little, it's nearly 4.5, but still touchscreen input, one of the best keyboards in the business. The touchpad, solid. I'm not expecting anything different from what I've already experienced with the previous gen that I covered. Fingerprint scanner right here. It's just a nice machine. Speaker quality, we'll test, we'll find out exactly how well it performs. The most interesting part to me here is what I've been mentioning throughout the entire video. It's going to be what battery life is like. I expect this to be impressive. I don't know what HP has spec'd it at, in terms of what they're quoting the battery life at. I expect it's very good on paper. I'm hoping that we see something around 10 hours with this, because even though it has a 4K panel, it again is HP's signature low power IPS panel. I don't think it's the 1 watt, but if it is, then battery life should be fairly solid with this, because even with the 4K display, it's using very little power. And again, if you don't care about having a dedicated GPU or a desktop class replacement CPU, this might be one of the best options out there. Right now, in terms of competing products, the Lenovo 9i15 is really the direct competitor, but that model, I'm not sure if they're speccing it similarly to this. That, again, is going to be sporting a CPU that is more of a desktop class chip. That's the one I have in-house right now, and that wouldn't be an apples-to-apples comparison, even though the form factor would be nearly identical. And remember, the beauty of these machines is the ability, of course, to flip around the display, use it essentially any way you want: tablet mode, content consumption mode, tent mode, whatever it is, you can do it. This does not have a privacy display. That's an option that you can get. Wi-Fi 6 on board, of course, Bluetooth 5.0, just a well-rounded machine. So we're going to see how it performs. Build quality seems good. I'm not detecting anything on first glance. Sometimes, when I get these things out of the box, we've got a creak there, or, something, a popping, but everything looks good. I mean, it's a nice machine. It all depends on what you're really looking for, as I've mentioned throughout the course of this unboxing. But I'm going to put it through the paces, see how it performs, and of course, I will come back to all of you with an update soon. But it's an exciting 2-in-1, no question about it. And by the way, of course, something HP does is that we do have nubs here, little bumpers, so that when you do have the keyboard on a surface in content consumption mode, or you're drawing, you don't have to worry that any of the hardware here is going to get scratched, because there is a buffer between the surface and the keyboard deck. So overall, a nice machine, at least at first glance. It's going to be all about battery life and whether or not you're looking for a 15-inch experience. And I imagine, again, this is going to be a budget-friendly machine. I'll include a link in the description of the actual literal build, as well as an affiliate. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe, and please stay safe. Later.